The term dad bod has been thrown around a lot online lately. Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and I thought I would chat with you guys and gals a little bit about this today. But a quick reminder, if you guys would like this video, I would appreciate it. If you aren't following or subscribed to me, please do so. And if you would be so kind as to drop a comment down below my video, whether it's your thoughts or just to say hi, I would absolutely appreciate that. Thank you so much. All right, let's get over to the topic. And it's kind of funny because I've done stuff like talk about transforming your dad bod to daddy. And I've had guys like my client, Alex, who, it was interesting. I put his, like a shirtless picture up from his testimonials, quite a few months ago with in a circle of friends of mine on social media who were ladies. And they all kind of said, yeah, that's like the perfect dad bod. It's perfect. He looks great. Right? And these were all attractive women, right? These are all attractive women who all work out and were fit. And so people are misunderstanding the dad bod thing because there were surveys done, and a lot of surveys came back showing women like the dad bod in these surveys, and then everyone is taking it out of context and they're like, oh, these are women, they just want a guy who's out of shape because they want to be lazy. And you see these guys reflecting this, and then you see guys who are like, well, I don't need to eat healthy or work out because, women like the dad bod. And they were not understanding what the dad bod was. The dad bod doesn't mean a guy who doesn't work out, right? The dad bods that were used in a lot of these surveys and studies and what people were talking about is a guy who works out, a guy who's got some muscle, but he's still a little cuddly. Okay, do you understand? In other words, they still wanted a guy who goes to the gym. Like they found that to be a good body. Like they want a little muscle on a guy. They don't mind a little bit of padding around the stomach. That was the difference. Okay, and that's what people were missing with all of that. It's that a lot of the women in those surveys didn't necessarily prefer the ripped abs. They didn't necessarily like a deep six-pack. They also don't like just a guy with a giant belly either. And they didn't like the really skinny guy. So what essentially this is saying is, rather than it being about looks, what they're looking for in the dad bod was a guy who's still strong enough to protect them, looks cuddly, but who they know is still going to enjoy a meal with them. In other words, they wanted a guy to be strong. Like they look at those bodies, and that was what the women who answered that way were seeking. They want a man who's got a little muscle and size. Okay, he's not thin, he's not skinny. They like him a little thicker. Okay, because they want a little bit of muscle on there. The same thing, like a lot of guys talk about the height thing. Why do a lot of women prefer tall guys? Not saying they all do. Why is there a tendency? Because he can protect them. They see him as a better physical protector, and that is hardwired into biology. And it's the same with carrying a little bit of muscle. Okay, it's the same concept. It's hardwired into biology that most women don't want to be the one to have to be the protector. They want a man who they feel can keep them physically safe. Women are hardwired for security, and that security can be physical, it can be emotional, it can be financial. I mean, ideally all three. That is again biology. This is hardwiring. Women have different tastes, of course. Every woman is different. They're all individuals, but there is a tendency in the hardwiring to be attracted to that. They're attracted to men who they feel that can protect them. Now, what they don't like are too much of the too douchey of a guy, too narcissistic of a guy. And there is why the issue comes up with being too ripped, too lean, too shredded, why they don't always like that. Not saying some women don't, but why it's seen that way, because they're going to perceive it as, is this guy going to be staring in the mirror all the time? Is he going to be looking in the mirror more than he's looking at me? Is he going to be douchey? Is he going to be a problem with when I want to eat certain things? Is it going to, I can't, am I not going to be able to eat around him? Okay. That was the issue sometimes that comes up in these surveys. And so if they're looking for something in a partner, they liked just a little extra padding. It didn't mean they wanted a guy who was fat. Understand that difference. It does not mean that they want and they're attracted to a guy with a big belly or who doesn't work out at all. It was a little extra padding, right? Doesn't necessarily have to have abs. Can have just a little bit of squish around the stomach and they're like, it's still good, you know, I can cuddle that. But he's still strong, cuddly, looks like he can protect me. I feel safe with him. All right? That is the biological basis of it. So that being said, that's what's happening. But unfortunately, then you have all these guys who've taken it the other way, that it meant someone who's completely out of shape. And then we've seen people in certain fitness circles who literally spin it the other way too. You know, they spin it in another direction to, you know, where they're like, oh, these are women, they would be insecure. No, it's actually not about the insecure. It's really not. I mean, just having muscle alone, it can create an insecurity issue. Yeah, and that does happen with insecure couples and insecure women, insecure men the same way. That does work both ways, and we all know that. We all know that when you are really fit and in good shape with a good body, there's going to be potential jealousy issues unless you have someone who has a similar lifestyle. This is one reason really fit people who are serious into lifting aren't always very compatible with people who aren't. Okay? But again, these guys saying that it was about that, no, it really wasn't. It was about looking at what are they hardwired to look for? Because women are not as geared towards appearance as men are. So it wasn't about the visual. It was about what does it represent. Okay? So they want a guy who goes to the gym. They want a man who's strong and manly and rugged. Okay? But they also like a man who's compassionate. And they feel like the guy's a narcissist douchebag, he might not be too compassionate, not necessarily what they're looking for. So a lot of this are how they perceive these traits. Like these physical traits, what personality types and roles does that fit with? Okay? You have to understand that that's the difference. It's not like the way men look at things. So again, people taking all of it out of context, and it's guys taking it out of context who aren't understanding what the dad bod actually was. Okay? It doesn't mean a completely out of shape guy who doesn't lift and has a big belly. That's not what it meant.